What's the deal behind Hazbin Hotel's most hopeful character? I hope you've made your reservations and have dressed for the heat because we're checking into Hazbin Hotel for a demonically deep dive into Charlotte Morningstar, aka Charlie. Who is she really behind the optimistic sweetness? And why is she the most potentially powerful being of them all? Both are important questions, and to answer them, we should simply start at the beginning. For Charlie, that would mean that first, we need to investigate her parents, both of whom are larger-than-life entities from classic mythology and religion. Her father was believed to be the brightest angel in heaven before his fall, and her mother was the first woman in creation. No, not Eve, the other first woman that she replaced. Yes, indeed, Charlie has some spicy, powerful parents, starting with her father, none other than the infamous Lucifer Morningstar. Charlie's father, Lucifer himself, is depicted as a free-spirited, creative being in the Hazbin Hotel universe. Charlie explains what she knows of her dad's origins within the series, telling us that he was a dreamer with fantastical ideas for all of creation. His free thinking and creativity apparently did not sit well with the other angels of heaven, and he was seen as a potential threat to their desired order. Lucifer had to watch as an outsider while the other angels built the universe as they saw fit. This was until they created Eden, and with it, the first humans to live in its gardens. These first beings of mankind were intended to be equals, but Adam demanded to be in control. Lilith, unwilling to bend to Adam's will, fled the garden. As he watched from the outside, Lucifer couldn't help but admire Lilith's sense of self-worth and independence, and so he went to her. The two of them wished to share the idea of free will with the rest of creation, and so brought the fruit of knowledge and offered it to Adam's new wife, Eve. This single decision opened the doors to hell. Quite literally, in fact, as Eve's act of disobedience on the mortal plane brought the realm of hell into existence. Lucifer, as well as Lilith, were cast into this pit for the part they played, doomed to only ever see the evil in mankind's souls. Lucifer's origin here draws inspiration from classic mythos and gives it a good-natured twist. Here, at the very least, the Morningstar had good intentions with his actions and the betterment of others in his heart. In this sense, he's not unlike Prometheus from classic mythology, seeking to grant mortals the gift of fire after seeing them suffer in the cold. His reward for this kind act was eternal torture bound to a rock for an eagle to eat his liver out every day forever. His liver would grow back every night. Fun! However, outside of Hazbin's universe, the word good rarely has anything to do with the former highest angel, if ever at all. Pick a name, any name: Satan, Mephistopheles, Moloch, Lucifer, the dragon. These are all names this entity has been known as, or otherwise associated with, in stories, poems, and religious texts through the history of humanity. Religion, particularly Christianity, is the source of these tales despite just how much of it can be up to the reader's interpretation. Of course, there are many religions that offer up a sort of evil adversary to the entity of good within their beliefs. And further still, a lot of these stories are quite similar. Buddha, for instance, was tempted by a demon named Mara to deter him from the path of enlightenment. Islam, as a fellow Abrahamic religion with Christianity, shares a direct parallel with the entity of Satan, being an adversary to God who was cast out of heaven. As I mentioned before, there is a certain amount of interpretation to be had when looking for evidence of Lucifer within the pages of Scripture, at least outside of the passages regarding the serpent in the Garden of Eden, or even from the book of Luke where he claims he saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. One such passage is found in the book of Isaiah, and a modern translation of the original Hebrew reads, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn, you have been cast down to the earth. But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit." There is a debate here as to whether this passage refers to Lucifer or the king of Babylon, or both in the sense that the king is simply a pawn of the devil. Similarly, in the book of Ezekiel, there's another verse where a king and Lucifer may be superimposed. It reads as follows: "You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created, till unrighteousness was found in you. In the abundance of your trade, you were filled with violence in your midst, and you sinned. So I cast you as a profane thing from the mountain of God, and I destroyed you, O guardian cherub. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. I brought fire out from your midst. It consumed you, and I turned you to ashes on the earth in sight of all who saw you. "You have come to a dreadful end and shall be no more forever." These two excerpts seem to be the largest influence on later writing works, such as Paradise Lost by John Milton, who seemingly took these ideas and ran with them. In Milton's work, Lucifer rebels with a third of the angels against the notion that they would have to be subservient to God's Son. In this poem, the Son of God, presently a nameless spirit, single-handedly defeats Lucifer and his rebellious angels and casts them into the abyss. There have been many, many retellings or reinterpretations of this general story in which we see Lucifer rebelling for different reasons, such as a refusal to bow down to mankind. Lucifer also has varying levels of status in the ever-changing angelic hierarchy over the ages. However, he is always depicted to be among the highest order, if not the highest of all. Pride is the most common factor among all of Lucifer's interpretations, and even his Hazbin Hotel iteration has it. We can certainly see it in his battle with Adam, as well as in his sing-off against Aleister. Which, as an aside, can I just say how awesome it is that they referenced the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" when Lucifer whipped out a golden fiddle and started angrily playing it towards Aleister? It was just fantastic. Well done. All of that said, Lucifer's pride in his daughter seems to be the brightest point of his character as we know him so far. This single thing, love in something other than himself, sets him far, far apart from the classical version of the character. Even if he is a bit distant and socially awkward with Charlie at first, it seems as though he was just a nervous father afraid of messing up. For Charlie, this bodes well, given the fact that her mother has been completely absent for at least the past 7 years, which is an excellent segue to talk about her. Lilith, Charlie's mom. Lilith's history is a bit more scattered than Lucifer's, and it's equally muddy. Heck, many believe the name Lucifer to be entirely a mistranslation, and maybe it is, but here we are, and the name has stuck. One of Lilith's quirkiest potential appearances actually happens to come at us courtesy of an Assyrian Akkadian translation of the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh, from Gilgamesh and Enkidu and the Netherworld. Gilgamesh assists Ea with a bit of an infestation in the hulubu tree that she intends to make into a throne. A zoo bird seems to be nesting in its branches. A serpent has made its home around its base. And, a Kisikililaki has made itself a home within the tree's trunk. This creature, in fear of the hero Gilgamesh, destroys her home and runs for the forest. I mean, I get it. If Gilgamesh had it out for me, I would probably hoof it too. In the 1930s, the translator and expert in Sumerian history and language named Samuel Noah Kramer translates this creature's name simply to, you guessed it, Lilith, which is a little easier to say. A later still academic compendium titled Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible agrees with this assertion. As crazy as it is, if Samuel was correct, the idea of Lilith would now be over 4,000 years old. But where did this idea of Lilith actually originate? Well, it might seem a bit on the nose, but it is indeed in the book of Genesis in the Old Testament that started this whole thing. Lilith, just as Hazbin Hotel presents her, is believed by some to be the first wife of Adam. Now, I know what you might be saying. Adam only ever had one wife, and it was Eve. Or maybe you're not saying that. You're probably here because you're a Hazbin fan after all. Anyway, where Eve was created from a rib taken from Adam, Lilith was created at the same time as Adam from the clay of the earth. Because they were formed of the same material, by the same hands, Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam because, and she's correct here, they should be equals. If at this point you're wondering, when did this happen in Genesis? You'll have to prepare to use your imagination a bit, as it was one single passage taken under the assumption that every word in the Old Testament was truth. Genesis 1:27 reads, "So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them." While later Genesis 2:18-23 reads, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." God then makes all manner of creatures out of the ground and brings them to Adam to name, but none of them are a suitable helper. And so when the first man was sleeping, God was creeping and pulled out one of Adam's freaking ribs and then heals him up right quick. From this, woman is created, for she was taken out of man. Alrighty. While there are many who believe the first passage to be an overview, while the following ones to be the details, there are also plenty of others who take the word as truth and interpret it to mean that there was a woman before Eve. This lone sentence was enough to spawn legend after legend, and really was the origin of a lot of demon myths in Jewish folklore. From here, legend scatters far and wide. Lilith fled the Garden of Eden after refusing to be second to Adam. The Alphabet of Ben Sira, a compendium of stories of heroes from the Bible and Talmud, depicts the scene as follows. After God created Adam, who was alone, he said, "It's not good for man to be alone." Then he created a woman for Adam from the earth as he had created Adam himself and called her Lilith. Adam and Lilith immediately began to fight. She said, "I will not lie below," and he said, "I will not lie beneath you, but only on top, for you are fit only to be in the bottom position while I am to be the superior one." Lilith responded, "We are equal to each other insomuch as we were both created from the earth." But they would not listen to one another. When Lilith saw this, she pronounced the ineffable name and flew away into the air. Adam cries out to his creator, "The woman you gave me has run away." And at once the Holy One set 3 angels to bring her back. Said the Holy One to Adam, "If she agrees to come back, what is made is good. If not, she must permit 100 of her children to die every day." The angels left God and pursued Lilith, whom they overtook in the midst of the sea. They told her God's word, but she did not wish to return. The angels said, "We shall drown you in the sea." "Leave me," she said. "I was created only to bring sickness to infants. If the infant is male, I have dominion over him for 8 days after his birth, and if female, for 20 days. When the angels heard Lilith's word, they insisted she go back. But she swore to them, "Whenever I see you or your forms in an amulet, I will have no power over that infant." She also agreed to have 100 of her children die every day. Accordingly, every day 100 demons perish. And for that same reason, the angels' names are written on the amulets of young children. When Lilith sees their names, she remembers her oath and the child recovers. The alphabet also expanded on this with regard to the mention of Lilith's children. Lilith had found a cave where she arrived on the shores of the Red Sea, and there she made lovers of every demon who called that cavern home. She gave birth to scores of demonic children, which are what the 3 angels threatened to destroy. Lilith's children being repeatedly destroyed by angels in great numbers? That sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? Especially when you consider what the residents of Hazbin that are being destroyed more and more frequently are. And then there's that cliffhanger at the end of Hazbin's first season. Adam is dead and the angels are unable to kill the demons as they see fit. Could this deal Lilith is said to have made in the show be related to this portion of her mythos? It's not fully explained in the show yet, but I do appreciate that she's lounging on a beach by a heavenly body of water. You know, like the one where she was chased by angels to drown in? Anyway, one version of these legends has the father of these children being the Archangel Samael, whose identity, much like Lilith's existence, is disputed. Samael shares many characteristics with Lucifer and, depending on who you ask, is either the same being or a different entity altogether. But now that we've had a look at her parents, I believe it's time to see just who Charlie Morningstar is, or might become as the story unfolds. Charlie Morningstar is nothing if not optimistic. She's about as selfless as they come, to a frankly debilitating extent as we see when she worries about others' well-being far before her own. Not quite a Mary Sue, but definitely a Pollyanna for those in the know. We've seen this selflessness bring her to the point of not being able to sleep from anxiety. She's also a lofty dreamer. Lucifer was quite correct when he said that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. With that specific statement in mind, just what does that make Charlie? As we looked at earlier, quite often Lucifer Morningstar is considered to be either one of the upper ranks of angels or the highest and mightiest of them all. If we look at his appearance in Hazbin Hotel, we see that he actually has 6 wings, a feature so far only shared with the seraphim. So at this point, from what we can tell, Lucifer is likely to be a seraphim himself, just as he is in a lot of folklore. That could mean that Charlie is a descendant of what we currently know to be the highest classification of angel in this series. That's nothing to shake a stick at. But what about the other half? Lilith was the first human woman in this universe, but she eventually becomes a sinner demon when she falls to hell. What does this mean for Charlie exactly? Well, a lot potentially. It really doesn't even depend on the source, because just about all sources in folklore or pop culture point to her lineage being a potent combination. If we are to reference biblical folklore, a major reason for the flood that Noah rode out in the ark was due to the existence of beings being born of angel and mankind, the Nephilim. Accounts vary from this title simply meaning giants to being considered like the Greek heroes from legend. The stories of these entities is examined a bit more in the book of Enoch, but to take a look at the Bible itself, we can turn to the book of Genesis. Genesis 6:1-4 reads, "The Nephilim were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown." That last portion carries a lot of weight, and a lot of the elements of pop culture have taken it and run with it. The series Supernatural, for example, takes the route of the Nephilim being greater than the sum of their parts, and are in fact more powerful than their angelic parent. We see this when Lucifer from that universe has a son, Jack, who is leagues beyond his father in potential. Eventually, he goes on to strip God himself of his omnipotent power. The idea of the hybrid being mightier isn't exactly new either. Underworld has a similar concept with their vampire-Lycan hybrid. And even other genres like Dragon Ball have gone this route with the Saiyan race, Gohan being the chief example, even if he did fall off the wagon for a while. Other series, such as that of the Diablo games, changes the spelling of Nephilim and has it set as the union of an angel and a demon instead. Chances are relatively high that Charlie is indeed one of these beings, and we see a short glimpse of her untapped potential during her battle with Adam. There's a moment where, much to Adam's surprise, she simply catches one of his attacks with a single hand. Her arm is woven with crimson power just as the executioner angel attacks in the midst of his rage. I don't believe it's a stretch to say that we haven't seen the true force of Charlie's strength. Heck, she didn't even need angelic steel to wound the dude, bro. She just summoned a trident through her own might, which was absolutely wicked. What this means for Charlie's future is uncertain. She not only inherited her father's ambitious nature, but also his angelic power, and possibly more. She could certainly use this to lead the sinners to redemption and a rebirth in heaven, but there are a number of uncertainties in the air. For one, Lilith. The first woman vanished from hell some time ago, and as we find out in the season 1 finale, she's currently living somewhere far nicer, whether it be heaven or somewhere back in the Garden of Eden. This is where things might get twisted for Charlie, since we find that Lilith apparently made a deal, one that seems to have been broken by Adam's death. I'm curious if this has a link to Lilith's own folklore that we looked at earlier, regarding the angels meeting her at the Red Sea and threatening to kill 100 of her children each day unless she returned to Eden. We saw Charlie's initial reaction to Vaggie having a part in the effort to exterminate sinners, and I can imagine it would only be more severe to find out that her own mother had a part to play as well. If we can put our tinfoil hats on for a minute, I think there might even be more to this. When we see portraits of Charlie's family, they all seem fairly happy, but during the flashbacks with her father, we can see the moments that they spent together are sparks of happiness for them both. Lucifer seems to be sharing his dreams with Charlie, who's smiling, before Lilith comes into the room and takes her away from Lucifer. Both of their expressions change to sadness as Lilith walks away with the young Charlie, with Lucifer looking downright depressed. This scene has me wondering if perhaps Lilith didn't want Charlie getting her hopes up and so kept her away from her dad. Something else that may be nothing but perhaps is something is Lucifer's downright excitement when Charlie calls him. The conversation the two of them have makes it seem as though he's a bit of a deadbeat dad. But the way his demeanor changes when he realizes Charlie is inviting him over, it's like a complete 180. Just prior to this, we see him looking over his photos featuring Lilith with a concerned or nervous look in his eye as Charlie's trying to explain her work to him. Again, maybe it's nothing, but it kind of feels almost like he's not allowed to actually see his daughter unless it's on her terms. Like a classic vampire not being allowed to come inside unless they're invited. Things get muddier still when he actually arrives at the hotel, and it seems clear that Alistair does not want him present. This leads me to believe that Alistair might be working with Lilith to some degree. After all, Alistair shows up in hell after a 7-year absence, just after Charlie had reached out to her mom in the pilot. At that point, Lilith had also been gone for 7 years. This probably isn't a coincidence, and I can't help but wonder if Husk nailed Alistair in that hallway scene when he accused him of being on a leash. One quite possibly, if not probably, held by Lilith. This whole thing just reeks of a plot to manipulate Charlie, who is just trying to do the right thing. Charlie is under a lot of stress, not only from herself, but from numerous outside sources, some of which she isn't even aware of due to their shadowy nature. You have to wonder, will she crack under the pressure? She has grown up absolutely surrounded by evil, but has seemingly decided the path of good, even through her apparent emo phase that one of Lucifer's portraits alluded to. One thing is for sure, she's got heart and the best interests of others in mind. I suppose we're going to have to wait and see. She's got a lot of obstacles ahead of her, but perhaps Lucifer was right. Maybe in your needy hour, there isn't really a substitute for pure angelic power. If you love long-form videos like this massive dive into Hazbin lore and love indie animation and shows, I invite you to check into an extended stay on Nebula, our creator-made platform where you'll never have an ad interrupting you, unlike some other paid platforms. Because Nebula is made by independent creators, we're able to make things you'll love with creators you love. Like Dracula's ex-girlfriend, Abigail Thorne's upcoming Nebula original movie starring some hell of a boss stars. Spicy and irreverent content like this and more live exclusively on Nebula. You can even get more of a Has-Been Fix with extended versions of Georgia Dow's dives into the psychology of the characters. I also upload all my videos to Nebula first, before they are live on YouTube, so you can see what is next on this spooky channel right as it's out of the cauldron. Use my links to join us and support independent creators for a special rate. This all goes into making these creations a reality. But Nebula is more than just an experimental haven for creators, it is becoming the home for creators. Seriously, Nebula exclusives are quickly growing into some of the most interesting and creative content you can find anywhere on the internet. If you want to extend your stay at Hotel Nebula forever, get your soul a lifetime membership. My link, nebula.tv/abitfrank, will get you a special 40% off annual plans. Thanks for checking us out and for helping me continue to make these weird, spooky animations. Speaking of irreverent, spooky animations, what do you think is going on in Hazbin Hotel? Is Lilith holding all the cards here, or is Charlie's innate power and her reunion with her father going to throw a wrench in this deal she has? Do you want to see more Hazbin and Hullabalore? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you, friends and fiends, for watching this absolutely behemoth video about a tiny aspect of Hazbin Hotel. Subscribe so you won't miss the next one bubbling in the cauldron right now. Stay spooky. Goodbye.